So tell me about this mandolin.
Well, it's a Gibson A model, 1920 as far as we can tell, 1920 or possibly early 1921. I bought it about 2.5 years ago at the Swannanoa Gathering from a gentleman who was convinced that it responded to me in a way that it didn't respond to other people, and which I'm sure was just salesmanship on his
Right.
part. But as a result of that, he nicknamed it the Feral Cat when he sold it to me. So this is the Feral Cat.
Okay. Well, tell me about the problem that Gibsons have.
The problem.
Well, not some Gibsons have with this head.
Oh well, yeah. Some Gibsons, the top and back of this instrument is arched like a violin, and there are some Gibsons, some old Gibsons, not just Gibsons, but
Yeah.
arched instruments in general. Over time, sometimes the arch starts to sink, and the wood starts to sort of cave in slightly. Sometimes it's because the inner braces are loose, and other times it's just weather changes in the wood and whatnot. And it can be reversed. It can be repaired. It's fairly major surgery, but it can be done. Fortunately, this one looks very stable. The arch is still nice and strong. It hasn't sunk at all. And as I say, I've owned it for 2.5 years, and it hasn't moved. The arch hasn't sunk at all, and the neck is still very stable.
All right.
And apparently, it's been that way for the 90-some years of its life. So I don't imagine it's going anywhere anytime soon.
All right.
It's a well-built instrument.
You want to play something you want to play?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see what we have here. Well, sort of got Bach fever lately, so I played a bit of Bach. One is that I hold my pick with my thumb and my first two fingers, which is kind of not the norm. Most people hold picks more or less like this, thumb and the side of the index finger. I use the thumb and the tips of the first two fingers, which is unusual, but I don't think it's wrong. There are people who will say, "Oh, that's wrong," and that's
Is
bad.
it just hard on your arm that way? No?
It doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to make any difference really, one way or another. And I also anchor my little finger on the top of the mandolin, which some people will say that's bad technique and wrong and whatnot. And obviously the previous owner of this mandolin did that too. I didn't do that. That was there when I bought it. Funny thing, the mandolin I owned before this one also had a gouged away area on the top there from its previous owner as well. So I seem to attract mandolins previously owned by people who anchored their fingers on tops like me. But you know, both of these things, the three-fingered pick grip and anchoring the finger on the top, worked for me. And you know, it's funny because I mean I've been invited to teach at some fairly prestigious music camps, both mandolin and guitar, and it's always amusing to sort of be in that position when I have technique that I know is unconventional, and that some people take it upon themselves to denounce as wrong and, you know, inefficient and whatnot. And so forth. At Steve Kaufman's mandolin camp this past summer, one of the teachers was John Moore, who's a great bluegrass mandolin and guitar player, who plays blazingly fast and just effortlessly.
Really?
Amazing technique. And he invited me and several of the other teachers up on stage during the staff concert one night to you know, just jam on some tunes. And we were playing bluegrass fiddle tunes at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was hysterical. I mean, it was so fast it was ridiculous. And, you know, I mean, all of us were able to play at that speed. All of us were, you know, comfortable at such high speeds. And then the next day in class, I was talking about technique, and I was saying, you know, I've got unusual technique, but I don't think it's wrong. And I said, you know, one of the things is I anchor my finger on the top, and some people will say you shouldn't do that because you'll never develop speed. And then I just sort of stopped and I smiled, and everybody started.
Come on in, we're good.
I didn't know this. I thought this was an open store.
It is.
I stopped and smiled, and everybody started laughing because they knew what I was referring to.
Yeah. Right. No,
Doesn't seem to have slowed me down.
No, this was an instrument that was around in Carolyn's time, right?
No. No, Carolyn lived in the 1700s.
But so when was this invented?
1920. Oh, the mandolin.
Not that mandolin.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, this one's a 1920. Carolyn lived from 1670 to 1738.
Yes.
No, probably not. There was a in learning Bach music on mandolin. I've been doing a bit of research as to, you know, whether Bach would have known the instrument or not. He certainly didn't compose for it.
So what did they have instead that was
well,
similar?
What they had? Yeah, Well, I always thought that Vivaldi composed for mandolin, and Vivaldi was an exact contemporary of both Bach and Carolyn. But it turns out most likely what he was composing for was a predecessor instrument called mandolino, which had gut strings instead of steel, and probably had triple courses instead of double courses, and was tuned in fourths, not fifths.
Oh,
so
well, that makes a big difference.
Very different animal.
It's not really
and may not even have been played with a plectrum. It might have been played with bare fingers. So a very different animal. Vivaldi's compositions for mandolino are now performed commonly on the modern mandolin, but I don't think that's what he was composing for it. I don't think this instrument, as we know it now, existed during Carolyn's day.
Not with metal frets.
No, definitely
not with metal frets,
or the plastic,
and not with that. I mean, the original Italian mandolin has a bowl-shaped back.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, this kind of mandolin really was, I guess, created by Gibson in the late 19th century. I think.